Okay, we'll get started. As I mentioned in the email, this week we're gonna go through the coursework one, how to do most of the things you need to do in coursework one. Make it slightly okay. So I picked these things based on the feedback and during the marking. So I did demonstration for everyone now. Uh, Probably there will not be enough time to cover every single features which is required, but I picked the one most people struggled with, and for the part I can't really say provide actual code. I'll give you the rough ideas how to do that. I think you will be capable of just following that idea. And actually, quite of this content is already covered in the previous lectures. So basically, the first few weeks, and I can mention which week that was covered before, and then so you can go back and have look a bit more background. Okay, and also for this one here, actually for do the coursework, and you probably just need the lecture slides and reading the reader materials at the end of each lecture. That's probably all the things you ever need, and don't spend too much time to go online look for things or go look at the YouTube. Sometimes might waste lots and spend lots of time, but actually get you confused in what you need to do. And also, what we covered here is useful in the sense, and in the coursework too, you need some of the coursework one features to demonstrate that your uh, coursework two requirements. For example, and in the coursework two, you need to be able to update the details or change the details of a lesson or class. Then you need the front end there to be able to do that, and you can make the changes and submit to database. Okay. Uh, Okay, so first I'll just go through the requirements and fairly quickly, just to remind you, because this is like almost 2 months ago now when you did the coursework, isn't it? Uh, the first part is about the users. We need to have at least two different type of users. One is the students looking for classes or activities, and the other one is the providers who provide these classes and activities. And then obviously you need to be able to register, so either as a normal student user or provide user. So the requirement says you need to at least email address and password, that's the minimum you can. And then you need an HTML email validation, so checking the emails, and then say check if the email address is already registered. So the last one is slightly more difficult. You have to actually check the existing registered user's email and see if it's already have the user email address. Okay, and then the login logout part is when the user is logging, and it should display the user information on the page. Just say you go to any website, for example Amazon. Once you log in, it will show you say welcome or username on the page. And you should provide error information if login failed, whether say the password is incorrect or the user is not registered. And then when you log out, and the page should remove all the user information, so it should no longer show who is the user logging. And also, implied in here is you should have different type of buttons shown. For example, when no user is logged in, you should have the option to log in or register. And when the user is logged in, then the login or register button should no longer be there. Instead of you should have a sign out button and showing who the user is, etc. Okay, so another big part of the coursework is about doing search. So we're probably going to look at these in more details as we come to here, but you need to be able to do search in a sense, and not just entire match. If you just type one word, it should do the search. And also search to be work in conjunction with other functions like filtering. So you should be able to, to do say filtering first and then do the search on the result of filtering. And then also this leads to the filtering part. And okay, so you need to be able to filter more than once. For example, first filter by, let's say, the price, and then filter by locations. Okay, that is proved to be a bit difficult for some of the students. And again, so filter needs to work with search as well. And the last one is probably the most people didn't do that, is to make the filter option dynamic. And in the sense, if you do a search and then now there's only two type of classes available, then the filter options should update and to show only those two available options or classes. Okay, and then you need to do the sorting, so it's quite straightforward, and just to make sure it works with search and filtering. And the leave reviews is actually a more difficult features among these. So that means the user needs to be able to leave a review and ranking 1 to 5. That's easy. Uh, the user can only review once. That's something you have to record who did the review and check that later on. And then you need to use all these information to display average rating and number of reviews. Okay, and this is the last part of the requirements. So this is for the excuse me, and for the provider. So first you need to see the classes the provider registered or created, and then the classes should have these information. That's quite straightforward. And the last point is the service provider should be able to add new classes. That's how they add the list of classes or make changes to the existing classes. And this might sound a bit difficult, but actually relatively straightforward. We're going to see that later on. Okay, now we move on to the solution part. Okay, as I said, this is one of the many possible ways to do this. So I try to use Vue as much as possible, and I try to make the code as short as possible, partly so that I can fit on the slides. But not necessarily means they are the best way or the most readable way to do these different functions. Okay. I will start with the easy part, which with very little coding involved. It's just to design the app. And so the first question will be how many pages you need. So most people have three. So one for the search filter, one for the user registration and login, and one for the service provider. Okay, so I think you definitely need a separate page for the service provider because that's only applied to one type of user. And in my case, I combined the user part with the search and filtering. So I only have 2 pages. And so the next part would be to just design your page. We covered that in week 4 lecture. There's some tools mentioned there. This is my design, and not particularly interesting, but should have everything we need for the coursework. Okay, so the next part is actually to code your design. So this is your design, and now I have to turn that into HTML and CSS. So this is probably the easiest part of the entire coursework, and also you don't really get any specific mark for this. So I can show you my page in a second, but this is the code, nothing too special. I used one CSS formatting that's in this file. So in the header, so this is not header, I had a logo, had a search bar, which essentially here I just use a div, which is not even a text field. And I had 2 buttons for login and registration. And then on the side, I have 3 divs. These will be my filter, where I put my filter. And then in the main part, I put 6 divs. So this is to show, okay, what these lessons would look like. Currently, I call it products, because that's how I did in the week 4 lecture. Okay, there's some CSS formatting here. So I'm not going to talk too much in terms of, okay, font families or borders, but say mostly I used a grid here that might be useful. So I had a very simple grid, which is only 2 columns. The second column is 3 times the width of the first one, so that's what 1 FR and 3 FR is. And I set a gap, so some space between the columns. And then next is say, okay, for example, for my header, I want it to become between column 1 and 3, that means the entire row, and there will be the first row, that will be the top one. And similarly to this for the other things. Any questions so far? So, okay, so this is the actual file, which is exactly the same as we saw in the slides. So I had some things in the header, the logos, the search bar, some buttons, and 3 things on the side, and 6 things in the main part. So if I go to the okay, so so that's what it looks like, and not particularly pretty or anything. So you have the top bar, the search box, some buttons. This is my filtering, and this is what we're going to display different lessons information. I put them into box. You might have different design. You might put filter different places, or you show the product as rows instead of say boxes. That's entirely up to you. Okay. Okay, next part, and actually before we creating the system, we just talk about briefly about storing data. So the requirements is say that all data had to be saved in some way. So when you refresh the page, they don't just disappear. And so you can use local storage or session storage, it's up to you. And then you will need minimum a collection of the user informations or a collection about the lessons. There's other things you need to say. For example, the reviews, or which lesson, which is the user a student or provider, or which provider created which lesson, these information. And you also need to save, and it's up to you. You can create separate, say, object or array list to store those, or you can include in those. We're going to discuss later as we go through them. But these are the two, the minimum you need. You need the user array, essentially, and a lesson array. And so this is what I did. So for the user, it's an array, and each element is the object. It only has 2 attributes, email and password, minimum 2. And you can have as many as you want. And then you have the lesson array, depends on how many information you have for each lesson. I have topics, locations, and price. Follow the examples we used earlier on. Okay, and later on, say, as we need to add more information, say, the type of user or who made a review on which class, I'm going to come to that and change this as we go, as we get there. And okay, so these are the requirements for the user. I'm not going to repeat them again. Okay, so this slide I want to discuss, say, we mentioned briefly before, you need these buttons on the page, and they have to update, depends on the status, whether the user is logged in or not, right? So when the app first opens, there should be 2 options, either to sign in or sign up. That is these 2 buttons. And then for for either of these, you need email and password, right? So you need email and password for both. Doesn't matter what you want to do. and you need sign in and sign up buttons. So that's the minimum you will need. And 2 fields and 2 buttons. And you could have, say, email password field for the sign in, different email password field for the sign up button. That's also okay. And in my case, I've been a bit lazy, so I share the same email and password field for sign up and sign in. So what happens then is these 2 buttons should disappear once user logged in. And then instead, the sign up button should appear. So that should show up in the first case, only show up when you're signing. And then you should show user information. In this case, I'm going to only show user email. That's the only information I have. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use VF. So this is one of the conditions when no one is signing. This is the second condition when someone is signing. Then I use VF to control only one of these will happen. Okay, so this is like the concept. I have this div called the user form, call any name, and then so this is the part where no user is when is someone signing, and this is the part when no user is signing. So you can see what I did is say I used a VIF. There's some condition here, and then I said VElse. So these are the view directives. So basically, only one of these will happen. If this is true, this doesn't happen, and if this false, then this will happen. Right? And also, later on you will see this current user, and is actually most of you used is just to save the email address or the username of the user who currently logged in. So you don't need to do any new variables or anything. So it just says, basically, when no user is signed in, this current user will be empty, so there will be return false. So nothing will do here, so this will do, and this will happen. And so in the case, if some user logged in, I will do this current user, just display the user's email. That's all it is. It will show up on the page, which meets one of the requirements. And then I have this button called sign out. And when it's clicked, it will call this sign out function in my view instance. We're going to see that later on. So if you remember, this @ symbol is a shorthand for v-on. Yeah. So instead of typing v-on column, I just use @ and slightly shorter. So so this will be what this part looks like. So this is what happens. We don't link to any view instance yet, and so the current user is showing as this here, and we have a button. Oh. So this part it says when no user is logged in. Basically, when this is false, this will run, and then this is what this part would look like. So you had the email, followed by input field, a password, followed by input field, and then two buttons, and then these two buttons. Excuse me. And you can see here it says, and when the sign-in button is clicked, I'm going to run this sign-in function in my view code, and similarly, we're going to do sign-up code when the sign-up button is clicked. And obviously, this actually will never happen at the same time, so you will only either have this part or this part, right? Because currently it's not linked to any view, so it does not doing anything to the view if or view as is, so it displays everything in what looks like this. Okay, and then I had this is actually my view code. And so I linked to the div element. I defined a few things. So the current user will be the user logged in, and the email and password of the user. So these are linked to the text field. Yep. So you can see here I use the vmodel email and vmodel password. So basically, whatever typed in these two input fields will be linked with the email and password in your view instance. And the user message is used to display some information. So again, I've been a little bit lazy. Yeah. So the user message is here, so you can use say login successful or any error message, you can use that to display. So currently it's empty, so it doesn't really show anything yet. Okay, and then I have 3 functions for 3 buttons I have on the previous page. And so there's sign up function, sign in, sign out. So these are different things I'll do when you click those buttons. Any questions so far? Yeah. So now we, okay. So the first is the sign up function. So that's the first one here. So that's when the user click this button. So as I mentioned, I'm using the same email and password field, and for either sign in or sign up, depends on which one user click. So that's what happens to user click. Is that sign up? Yeah. Okay. So here I didn't include all the code because partly because it's not possible to fit everything in one slide, so getting slightly too long. So that's a function. So I first set the display message to empty. If there's something there before, it will be reset. Always said. So first is if this.email, so that refers to the email variable of this view instance, is empty, and if it's empty, to return false. So I use exclamation mark. So that means if this email is empty, then this condition will be true. Then it says this.user message equal to error, empty email, and a return. Okay. So what this do is it will stop. Basically, the return will stop the running of the functions, and this updated the user message, and then this error message will be shown. So in the view instance, you will see an error message, and the whole sign up will stop, and you have to do it again. And similarly, that's for the password. If it's empty, you will need to just say it's empty password and stop the whole thing. And also, you need to do the email validation for the comment as well, but it's somewhere here. So you'll have some other code here where you check the emails, and if it fails, you need to stop. And then the part is, if you pass all these if conditions, then now you can create a new user, which is a JSON object. It has these 2 fields, and then you put these values in. And then finally, and this is the local storage.set items, and you call this users, and followed by JSON string file, and this particularly new user added to your array. Okay. So again, here is not quite correct. So in the actual case, you probably should use array to store all the users. And in this case, I'm just being a bit lazy, so I only say save 1 user. I think that for demonstration purpose. But I think you can manage to do array. So what you need to do is you need to first local storage get item, get your array, and then append the essentially using push by this new object to the end of the array, and then set by setting the back. Yes, is that okay so far? Okay. Oh yeah. So there's common error. So lots of students have errors. Say when they will they checked the email is incorrect. For example, does not have at or something, but they will still create an account anyway. Okay. So that's partly because if you only use HTML5 email validations, it will give you an error message, but it does not stop the function from running. So basically, these codes will still be run and will still create a user account in the local storage. So you have to include your own email and validation here to stop it from running. The alternative will be have to capture the error event from this email HTML5 email validations. Okay, so both will take some work. Okay, and again, so this should be somewhere here again. So it should be part of the sign up function. And it does is to check the duplicate emails, because one of the requirements is if email address is already registered, it should not be allowed to register again. So this was discussed in the week 7 lecture already. So this is the same code, just copy paste here. And so what you need to do is to get from the local storage the list of the array of existing users. So I call that users, and I store the in array, again just called users. And then, so this is to see if the user, one of the users in this users array already have the same email address, which is called new email. Okay, so this is where I say the code is compact, just to make it shorter and make it slightly less readable. So the users is array. So dot sum is a quite new function in array, just to check if the array meets certain conditions. That's all it does. So the condition again is itself is a function, and it says this all refers to any elements in the array. So in this case, I call it user, and it returns user.email equal to new email. So new email is the one user just typed in when you try to register. So if any user in this user array, their email address equal to this new email, this will return true, and it will tells you say email already exists, and return say break, stop the registration part. Does that make sense? Okay, so this part you can do it differently. You can do your own iteration over the user array, and each time you get the element and you check if the user email and it's the same as new email. That's also okay. Probably more readable, and maybe 2 or 3 more lines code. That's all it is. Okay, and then so if this part pass, so basically if it doesn't return, then you're gonna push this new object into your array. So basically at the end of your user array, and then you local storage set items, and then save the array back to local storage. That's all it is. Yeah. And so this is else part is say the first time when you create adding a new user, the arrays and will be empty. And if you run these codes, then this will tell you you're given error because the array does not exist or is empty. So instead, so just do a check. If this is empty, it will go straight to the else part. This part will only run if the user is not empty. And then these 2 lines code is same as these 2 lines code here. So basically create a user object, and in this case, it just store that straight away because it's only the first user. Yes, is question or that okay? Yeah, hopefully. Okay, so the next part is, so we said we need 2 types of users, and then this again is quite straightforward to do, mostly just using the HTML element, which is a radio button. So this is what you see, the input type of radio. We have 2 here, and one is called the provider. The first one is actually should be student, and this one should be student, and second one will be provider. So that's why these 2 will be here. So you have to use view model on both. So if user select either of these, and the values will be saved to user type property. That's a new thing in there'll be new variable in the view instance, and the rest will be the same. And then finally, when you're actually saving the user into local storage, so besides the email and password, now I have a new type, which will save the values, whatever the user type value is. Yeah, does that? So I don't think have any code for this, but I think should be okay, right? It makes sense. Let me see. So this is what the entire code would look like. And so we have the form itself, as I said, and if you use a v, if, and else, so only one of these will be shown. And either is showing the current user information with the button of sign out, or with this part, which is registration or login. And all these codes we explained already. And okay, we already covered most of these functions, mostly the sign up function, and we're going to come to the sign in and actually sign out. These are probably the easiest part to do. And for the sign-in part, the logic is relatively simple. So user typed in an email and password. You probably want to first check if they're empty, and then just check if there's any existing users, registered users, have the same username and password. Okay, and so first I get the user array from my local storage, and then save them into a variable called saved user. Probably should call saved users. Ah, okay. And in this case, because if you remember previously, I'm being a bit lazy. I'm not saving entire array. I'm only saving one users. So what I can do is I just check if the saved users email equal to this dot email, which is what user typed in the email field, and saved users dot password equal to this dot password. And if that is successful, it will say this dot current user. If you remember, that's the variable to say who the current login user is, equal to this dot email. And else you send some other error messages. But in your actual code, you probably have to first get this is as an array, and then go through the array to check if any of this, if this condition is correct. And you can also use this sum function. If you remember, you can just say use a similar sum. When in this function, the returns is not just this, but say user email equal to this dot email and user password equal to this dot password. Okay, so what's happening here? So obviously, because of this line of code, now you set the values for the current user. It will actually first show the current user on the page because that values is now, but also remove the login and sign out button and remove the register and login button and add in the sign up button, all these for you now. So make it a little bit easier. Yeah. Okay, and finally the sign out function is probably the simplest one. All you're going to do is just to say this dot current user empty. So this will say put the two login and register button back to the page and also remove the user information on the page. And this is just to make sure you clear out the field. So once you reset the email and password to empty, then the form on the page will be empty. So and so if we actually look at the code and when it's run, Okay. So, so this is the version with actually the provider on there as well, but it's to show you what it looks like, and it's not quite working. And I can show the local storage. That's updated again. Oh, okay. I mean, the local storage already have something saved there. So obviously I didn't have any. And if I type sign up, you can even check. And it saves the users, etc. And if I then just click sign in, being a bit lazy, but then you can see the things would have changed, automatically disappeared, and there's only that one there. And if I click sign out, and it should clear out that value. Okay. The things you need to remember, say the current user value, I didn't save in the local storage, so you will not be able to see here. But I only saved that inside the view instance. So that's why when I'm using so I try signing, it will say error. So that means something is not quite working. Okay, and then if I go to console, I will show what's instance called to remember user form dot yeah. So the user form is where I saved. Sorry, the current user is the property I used to save the user value. That's not displayed in the local storage because there's no need. I don't need to save that after the page is closed. And if I click sign out, and all it does is actually just clear this part. Now it's empty. And actually, I forgot to do is clear out the message. So we had this error message before. So I should have in my sign out function to reset the user message as well. Something like this dot user message equal to empty. So basically reset everything. Is there anything I haven't reset it yet? No, that's everything. Yeah. And then if I did that, then this error message will appear after. Ah. Okay, and that's everything about search. Sorry, about user registration and login logout. Any questions? Or is there anything say I haven't covered, but issues you had in your coursework that you want to? I think I pretty much covered everything. I didn't give you all the details. So. Okay, and then we move on to the search and filtering part. So in my case, I have this list of courses. I didn't hard code. I mean, I kind of hard coded, but I put it in a separate file just called courses.js. Make it a bit easier to edit, so make the actual view code less shorter, and I called it courses. You will see this. We're going to use it quite a few times later on. And this is the actual data you'll be quite familiar by now, use it many times. And in terms of the HTML, CSS is relatively straightforward. So we need a an input field. The user can type in search terms, and then this is the input, and I link that to the term variable in my view instance. Essentially, I'll capture what user typed in my term. And because it's reactive, whenever the term changes, the view instance will update instantly. And then the next is the v-for. What it does is it loops through the results of all the courses match the search criteria. Okay, so you can see for course in results. Okay, remember we call it the results here, and the results will be created in the view later on. And then for each of these, and again, I'll do another loop, and this one, it says for each this course object, I just display all the keys and the values. So this is how you get it's not here anymore. Yeah, I'm gonna go there. So, and this line of code is how do you get all the, say, the topic, location, and price from each of the courses. That's this line. So it's you don't even need to know how many properties are there, and you can just, or what name of each property is. You can just do it like this. Okay, and this is the search. Actually, that's all the code you need for the search. As we said, so first we link to the div, which is the ID is called search, and we have this term, which is linked to here. So basically, that's whatever user typed in the field, search field. Okay, and here we have a computed property, which is called results. And if you remember, that's where we looped on in the v-for. Okay, so the results essentially is doing a filtering function. So you have this courses, if you remember, from the last slides. Okay, I'll make it. So remember this list, that is called courses. Okay. Actually, probably should we look at this? So that's the variable name for this array. It's called courses. So all the search does is do a filtering on these courses based on the search term user typed in. So the shorter way of doing this is say, and courses, which is an array, dot filter. Again, this is a JavaScript array function, nothing to do with view. And this is the actual function. Again, it's in arrow function, so it's say this will represent any courses inside this courses array. It says if the courses dot topic, so that's one of the properties. Basically, just give you a string, and so this includes, again, is a string function, and this term here is what user typed in the search field. So it says if the topic string including whatever user term typed in, and this will be true, then that will be included in the filter results, and it will get displayed there in the view for v-for loop. Does that make sense? Okay. Again, you can write a different. You can don't use filter or include these more advanced functions. You can write a few more lines code. You can achieve similar things. And so if we look at actual example, no, it should just called search. I don't need this one. And so by default, the search will be empty. That means for any of these topics, including empty, so that's true. That's why it's showing everything by default. And then if you start typing some words, I think it's typing A, and then it will show this. Okay, and if I type in AM, nothing shows up. I think it's showing E, showing English only, and P, etc. Yeah? Yeah, so that's what the search result's gonna look like. So next part is filtering. Okay, again, so for the filtering, the concept is quite similar. Oh, let's do this part. So you need to get to the user selection on the page somehow, which one, for example, filter by location or topic, and then use that data to filter your array. And then update the list that's going to be displayed on the page. So what's showing here is only the HTML for the filtering selector part, not to say the display part or anything. So it says something called filter, and it actually has a heading as well. Actually, this is copied from week 7 lecture again, so that's why it looks like this. So this selector multiple is again, that's something to do with the HTML, nothing to do with JavaScript code. It says this will be the type of selector that looks like this. So I want to make a selection which is not a drop down, but it display all the options at the same time. So, and this is what the selector and multiple means. And the V model means user location. So that means basically allow user to pick a location, and that value user selected will be, say, bind to the user location variable in my view instance. So just remember that. Okay, and okay, so here is part of this selector multiple is the different options you need, and it's generated dynamically using a v-for, but the location itself is just a location, and it's have to loop through this variable called locations. We're going to see how we get that in the view instance, but that's defined in view, so you can just loop through for all the location values. It's going to display here. So this is why you would have something like this, with all the values populated by all different locations in the dataset. Okay, this is not necessary, but this is again just copied from previous example. This line is just to show you so you can see visually the location or the selection made here is displayed correctly here. So all it did is just say display the values of user locations. So when user change their location here, the selected location part should update. And if it change brand cross, it will be showing brand cross here. Okay. The next is the reset button. Essentially, it's just to remove the selections, so user can start from the beginning again. So we have this reset button, and when it's clicked, they run this reset function, and you can see later on in the code what this reset function does. And then finally, this part is to display the search result or the filtering results. Again, so that's for course in results, so that's after filtering. The class is for formatting, doesn't matter. And this is the same as before. For each of these courses, you display all the properties or fields it has. Okay, and then this is actually all the view code for the filtering part. And if you remember, this user location is where stores the user selection is. And it is actually made as an array. In the sense, you actually user can select multiple locations. They call them now and handle. So I made it an array. And the reset button, all it does is just to clear the user location value. That's all it does, to make it empty array again. That's probably the simplest part. Okay. So then we have two computed properties. And the results is for filtering. And the locations is used to generate the list of the options displayed here. Right? So if you remember, in this code before, the locations is used here and to generate all the options in the selection box. So that is computed. Hang on, let me turn. And then here, this is computed here. That's the locations. Okay. And then this is, again, something a little bit more advanced. Again, I just try to write a shorter code. And so the first is here is something called an expand operator. What it does is it turns this set into an array. Okay, again, so the difference between set and array is the set, the elements inside does not have order. So you cannot say, I want to get the first element of set. Because it has no order, it will not return. And the second thing is, in the set, you cannot have two elements of the same value. So you can have 5 numbers, but they have to be different numbers. You cannot have 2 ones in a set. In our case, it's ideal because we want to all the unique locations in our data set. So we don't really care the orders of the locations, but we don't want any duplicates. So that's what you want a set. Okay, so this is how you get an unique locations into a set. So the courses is just our courses array. If you remember a few slides back, the array of all the courses, 10 of those. And then the map function actually creates a set. And here, the x would represent each of the courses. And it just says, use the courses.location as the element of this set. Okay, there's actually lots of things happening, but I just put it just into one line. So you need to create a set from courses, and I use all the locations and from the different courses. And then finally, this one, expand or turn this set into an array. So in the end, this function would return an array, which is array of locations. Yeah. Again, you might be able to make it more readable by writing a few more lines of code. Don't use, say, the set. So the other way, more readable way would be, and just go through the courses, and you create a new array, maybe called locations, and every time for each element in the courses, you check the location. If it already exists in the locations array, then don't add. If it doesn't exist, and add it, and then go through all the locations in the courses, and you get the same result. Yeah? Okay, and then the next one, the results, is actually doing the filtering on the courses. So that's what this courses dot and filter does. So we already seen that before previously when we do the search. It's the same, doing the filtering, but it's here, the filtering conditions will be different. So the first thing I did is says this dot user locations dot length equal to 0. So that basically means if user hasn't selected anything yet, the user selection part is 0. It's always true, and then everything will be returned. So basically nothing is filtered. And this part will only happen when there is something selected. Otherwise, and this part will be true, and it will already return everything. So it just says, okay, and user locations dot include. Okay, so if you remember, user locations is just a string. So this will be Hendon, Collindale, Golden Screen, or something, including course and dot locations. So course will be each course in the array, and the location will depends on where the course is, will be Collindale. And you can also not using include. For example, you can using equal as well. It will also work. Yeah. But basically it just means if the location of the course matches user location, that will be true. Otherwise it will be excluded from filter results. Yeah, does that make sense? So this is probably the easier part, the results, and this is actually quite compact. and you probably need more lines of code than the result filtering to actually write it, not using the set and the map. I can show you how it runs. So if we look at the filter code now, and can you read this okay, like a large enough? And this is the part which is shown in the front end in the HTML file. So you had the filter. This is the selection box, and this line shows you what is being currently selected, and that's our reset button. And this shows to a v4, and it shows everything in the results. And this code here is exactly the same as before, as was shown in the slides. So this is called filter. And if you select anything here, and it will change the list. And actually, I haven't tried. Okay, and so you can select multiple attributes, and including courses from either of those places. Okay, any questions about this part or anything I didn't quite cover? Okay. So we are almost there. So that's what it looks like. Okay. And then the next part is actually about combining the search and filters. And that's the more difficult part. And it works the same way if you want to combine multiple filters. And it works the same way. And so the general idea will be, say, and we already seen how do you filter the array, either by search or by filter. And the general idea is still the same. So you get these values, you try test the conditions for search and filter, and you combine the conditions and then to filter the entire list. So previously, you only consider either the search term or the location when filtering the course array. And then now you have to consider two at the same time. And you can easily expand to more as well. You can have, say, one search and two filter, just combined the same way. We're going to see how that works. There's not too much to say here. This is on HTML, so you have the search box, which is exactly the same as before. And this is the filter part, which you can select locations, or you have the reset button if you want. And finally, this part and displayed everything in the results using v4. So these are exactly the same as before, except we put both the search box and the filter list on the same page. That's all. Okay, and the view code part is almost just like combining those two as well, with not that much difference. So we need two variables, one for the search term and one for the user selected locations. Again, it's the same, just put them all here. The reset button needs this reset function. Again, just copy it from the filter part. And then this location and property, or computed property, the same as before. Nothing changed. The only changes here is now this one runs not on the courses but on the results. Okay. Let me go back a bit. Okay, so this is the previous filter. Only for filter, you can see here, I want to get all the locations from the courses. So it's a static list, it always contains everything. And now this is changed to results. And because because I want to say update this. For example, if I did a search, then only less items or locations available on my, in the search results, then the filter option should update. Does that make? That's one of the requirements which many people didn't manage to do. Then why this is now changed to results instead of courses? Yes. No. Okay. So basically, the results is something dynamically changed. That's the result of the filtering. If I leave courses here, then you will always have the same number of locations to select in your list. So basically, this list here will never change, right? But when we combine in search and filter, we want this list to change. For example, if I search for English and this does not available in brand cross, and I don't want brand cross to show up, the way to do this is to go through the result list and find all the unique locations. So to do that is the only thing you need to change is instead of courses, you use results here, and they check all the locations in results. Okay, and then this is the part when you do the filtering of the array, basically show the search results, and you do course.filter, that's still the same, and then for each course, you have to combine the two conditions together. So that I said, so this part is my search condition. The search condition will be course.topic.includes this.term. Okay, so first the this.term is what the user typed in, the text. And the the topic.include, we've seen that before. That just basically means the topic string of the course. The includes, that means that's say that's something similar to equal. And basically this condition is exactly the same as we had before for search. If you remember, you can go back and have a quick look of the search. This is a few slides back now. Yeah. So in the search, what do we filter? It just says course.topic.includes term. Okay. So that's what we did before. So we just do exactly the same. No. Okay. How do I scroll? No, I just use arrow then. I have to jump. Okay. So we just said, and this part is exactly the same as before in the search. And similarly, and this part is exactly the same as before as we used in filter. So we check either if the user location length is 0 or the user location includes the course location. Yeah. So all I did is just say I saved the results in these two variables, one called search course, so that will be either true or false, and then the second this second Boolean variable called filter course, and it's either true or false. And then finally I return this. So in this search, the logic is you have to meet both requirements. So that I say I will return search course, which is this, and filter course, which is this. So this value or this expression will only be true if both are true, right? So in this case, this is the values you need to do the filtering on the entire array. So only when this condition is true, then the course will be kept in the search results or filtering results. Does that make sense? So basically, that where we manage to combine the filtering and search together. Yeah. And you can imagine if we need to combine even more, so we just need to add, for example, can add another search conditions. which check if the, say, the topic equal to the topic user selected. And then here, you will return, say, there are 2 ands, so it will be search, filter, and filter 2. You can add as many as you want, combined this way. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, yeah, so this is what it looks like when it's running. You can run it in the actual code called the search filter. Okay, so first I have the search box. I can type in something, and which will reduce. In this case, it's not very useful. Maybe type E. Okay, and the things you can see now, and this one now only have these 3 locations because it's updated on the results of this instead of entire course list. And then I can select something else here, and then it says, okay, there's only one course contains E and in column there. Yeah. Okay, any questions about this part? This is probably the most difficult part. Okay, I'm not going to say anything about sorting. So the sorting is just using the sorting function of JavaScript array. That's all you need to do. Does that? It's relatively easy. And you just need to click a button which will sort your results array in certain ways. That's all it is. And you don't really, because once you sort, the display would update automatically. So that's all you need to do. Okay, the rating. So basically this is a review that people can rank the courses. Leave a number between 1 to 5 is quite straightforward. And here you have to save the value in the local storage, so the ranking doesn't disappear when, say, the pages reloads. And then there's different ways you can save this, and you can save the rating separately in a different array. Then you have to say for which course, which person leave the review, and what that is. Or you can store it with either user. You can say for this user what reviews or rankings he or she did and what those are. Or store with lesson, it's the same. So in the lessons, then you have to say who made the review and what the rankings are. So in this example, I save the review with the lesson. So we have the lessons array. So we have, for each object, we have the normal topic, location, and then price. Then I have a new one called ranking. The difference here is the value of the ranking is no longer, say, a text or number. And itself, again, is another array. So that this was square bracket is 4. And inside you have these objects. And each object says who made a review. So here I can only identify user by user email address and what their review is. Then you can have as many as you want here. So this will be one of the ways to store it. You can do equivalent in the user part, and you can say user, and you have a ranking, but then here you would say which lesson that is and what ranking is. Okay, would have not too much impact. Okay, and okay, yep. So one of the advantages of doing this way is, you need to display the number of reviews and average reviews for each lesson. And this way it's slightly easier to compute because all the reviews for one lesson is inside a single JSON object, will be all listed here. You just need to count how many elements are here and average the rankings here for each lesson. Whereas if you save the rankings with the user, then to calculate, say, the average of one class, you have to go through all the users, find who made a review of this class, and then do average. Slightly more complicated. Okay, this is the last part, and it's about the provider. So you need an extra property. So in the lesson to say and who created that course. So all you need to do is provider and then the provider's email address. That's all. So that's relatively easy. And then finally about say adding a course or editing a course. So this really just need to be done using forms and in a way very similar you do with the registration and login. So you have forms and each property will be a text field. So you can topic will be one text field, location will be another text field, and price will be a third one. If you have more, you have more. And previously you would have say username as a field or password has a different field. Here I just have few different fields with different names. And if you want to create a course, then you start with these fields with empty, and the provider will type in this button information and click a button. It will save it to the course to the lessons array. And similar as you would do for the user, when the user register, you fill in the information, it gets saved to the lessons array, and you might just do some checking to make sure no empty or say no text is entered in the price field. Okay, and then slightly more difficult is when you do editing. The case is you can still use the same field, but you have to load the existing values from the lessons array. So for example, you have to load this object from local storage, and you populate the topic field with mass, and location with Hendon, and price with 100. And then the user can change the things in the text field. That's just a normal text field, and click the save button, and then it gets saved back to the class array. Yeah, on all these you can mostly just done with vModel and vOn. That's for the handler. The vModel is binding the these different fields to the input fields on the front end. Okay, that's all. That's the last one. Yeah. So, any questions before you disappear? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Oh.